Fiddling around. I knew I shouldn't have been doing it. I was fiddling around. Welcome back, guys. I'm trying to knock these out. How's it going? Welcome back. Hope you're enjoying these podcasts. I'm trying to do different things. Trying to make it a little bit different. So today we're going to get into something I've been doing. I've been trying to do a lot. Well, not trying to. I've been doing a lot more research into different things. We're doing good. Everything's great, but the more research you do, the better a podcast you can do, especially when you're doing them by yourself. You need to make sure you have the right facts. So today we're going to get into Canadian whiskey. Yeah, I know. I know what you're thinking. Isn't that Crown Royal? No, it's not. There's a whole lot more there. So yeah, we're going to jump into that here in a minute. So let's get into the preamble, the housekeeping, the whatever you want to call it. So from the last we talked, I finally released the Shire tasting. If y'all have seen or heard that, it was fun. And I don't know if you saw in the thing, but it ended up being both of the whiskeys were the same mash bill. 75% corn, 21% rye, and 4% malted barley. So there's that. The Percheron, the French oak finished one was my favorite, but that's just because I like dark and kind of smoky and toffee coffee things. So anyway, I'm feeling pretty good. Today is Tuesday, I think the 28th of November. I'm at home, obviously. I'm in the shed of doom. It's not doom. It's actually nice in here right now. I have a little heater going, just to keep it not frozen in here. It's been about 50s, 50 something like that around here. So a lot better than it was during the summer, obviously. But we also, so I came in here. So today, wow. See, this is going to be a thing, I think. I'm sorry. Chemo head, man. It gets me off track real fast. But my wife is out of town, and she comes home today. So I thought I'm going to jump in, do this podcast. I meant to do it yesterday. Ran out of time. Had to go pick up my daughter, stuff like that. So I had my last session treatment, whatever, of round 1. So as of right now, I am 1 round down, 2 to go. So next week we start another hell week, which is 5 chemo treatments in 5 days. Well, 5, you know what I mean. Every day for 5 hours. Yeah, it sucks. Anyway, so if I lose track, if I get lost, I'm sorry. I apologize. But I'm trying to work through this, so and still give content, obviously. So just bear with me. You know what I mean? Just be nice. Be nice. If you need to leave a nasty comment to it, I don't care. Okay? I'm being serious. I really don't care. I really don't. I gotta get adjusted. I don't know why I have to adjust so much, but I do. I'm stepping on my cords. I am a hot mess. Okay, let's get into it. Okay, first off, I mean, I've said this before, but I do have challenge coins available. If anybody wants one, DM me. I'm working on shipping, trying to get it shipped out. As long as you're local, lower 48, it's easier to ship, but if you're overseas, it makes it a lot harder. So just let you know that. It needs to be worth my while to ship it, not shipping 3 times the amount of what the coin cost. You know what I mean? So anyway, let's get into it. Canadian whiskey. It's more than just Crown. It's a lot more. I tried to look for some Canadian background music. Maybe some Celine Dion. I don't know if she's Canadian or not. I think she is. She's from Quebec. Anyway, I've actually done more research on Canadian whiskey than I've done on a lot of others because I don't know a whole lot about it. I have 2 books, right here in front of me. One of them is a book I talk about all the time. Let me just tell you. Why does it keep doing this? This is pissing me off. One is Tasting Whiskey. Tasting Whiskey by Lew, L-E-W, Bryson. We've talked about this book multiple times. It is one that I would tell anybody in the whiskey community. If you're any sort of whiskey nerd, get this book. It's a great book. It has a lot of his thoughts in it, which is kind of cool because he's like a whiskey guy. It has a lot of his thoughts, but it also has a lot of just information. It's loaded with information. So we're going to dive a little bit into that later. All right. And the other book that I have was it was a borrow from my good friend Richard Amiro, Whiskey Provisioner. Go look him up, follow him. He is a whiskey somm as well. He used to be the head bartender at Crowded Barrel. He has now moved on. He's now working for Island Getaway Rum in Dripping Springs. Anyway, he gave me a little care package because I said something about doing research on Canadian whiskey, and he reached out and said, "Hey, I have a book and I have a sample." And I was like, "Cool, yeah." So I met up with him and got that. And it wasn't just a sample. It was 2 half bottles of whiskey and then a sample pack of like 5 different whiskeys. So thank you, Richard, so much for that. But the book that he let me borrow is Canadian Whisky, A New Portable Experience by, I'm going to screw this name up, but anyway, by Davin, D-A-V-I-N. I guess that's Davin de Kergamero. Kergamero, I don't know how to say it. It's a French last name with the E-A-U-X. Yeah. Anyway, this book is jam-packed full of stuff about everything from history to the science to the... Sorry, there's a bug flying in my face. History, science, background, deep dives on specific distilleries. It's... If you're into Canadian whiskey, then that's the book that you need to get. But I also have another shout out. Yeah, I know. I have had a lot of help with this, and I appreciate all the help. Zach Smith, I think it's Z Smith Whiskey Mixologist on Instagram. I'll put the link his link in both of their links in the description. But Zach, it was in my level 3 sommelier class, and super cool dude. He's a young guy doing amazing whiskey stuff. So give him a follow as well. If you're into, whiskey stuff. But he gave me 2. He went to Hiram Walker, I think, and he did a full-on panel, and he gave me all of his notes. Yeah, he did like a understanding guide and all this stuff, and also did some Google Foo. You Google Foo it and come up with your own thing. So we're going to culminate all of that information into one cohesive package that is probably going to be rambly and weird, but just bear with me and let's move up to Canada. All right, let's get into it, man. I'm trying to... Why are you yelling at the mic? I'm trying to adjust the mic, always adjusting the mic. So I've been listening to the podcast, because you gotta sample your own product, right? And I've noticed that the sound is good, and I hope it is. We got the new mic, and everything seems to be jiving. I hope it's good, and I hope you enjoy it. Hope it sounds better than it did before. All that being said, I'm gonna have to take a couple water breaks because it's I don't know, that chemo makes you parched. Okay, so Canada, right? Our brothers to the north. Oh, Canada. Yeah. I have a couple of friends. I call them friends. They're whiskey friends, but they're still friends. Gary B, Teresa. They're from Canada, and amazing human beings. Canada gets a bad rap sometimes for not, they don't have a whole lot of people. The places are really sparse and spread out, and you got Toronto, Quebec, Manitoba. There's like six cities, and that's it. Everybody else lives in the bush with Bigfoot, right? I would love to go Bigfoot hunting up there. I'm just saying, anybody that wants to go, let me get over this BS, and then we'll go hunt some Bigfoots. I don't want to kill him. I just want to see him. You know what I mean? He's interdimensional. It's fine. Oh man, this is funny. Okay, so let's start with a little history. Okay, Canadian whiskey in itself isn't a concept that's new, right? Canadian whiskey's been around for a long time, and around the time that American whiskey was, right? So when trust history or not, American history, trust it or not, it doesn't matter. We're going by what was given. Some people say that America was way before 1492. There was already people here and settlers and stuff like that. Anyway, my opinion aside, when the settlers came and they started settling more up north, like Detroit, Chicago, places like that, well, right on the other side of the Great Lakes is Canada. And so they also settled those cities. I don't know what's out on the others. Montreal. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So in Canada, they made the guideline that, hey, this is Canada, this is the United States. Kind of like with Mexico, there's a distinct line between the two. So most of the time it's a river, a creek, a lake, whatever. That's normally the dividing factor. So in early Canadian whiskey history, a lot of the guys, if not all of them, were from America. And they started making whiskey in Canada because laws, right? That's just how it is. We do it to get away from, doing having to pay taxes and all the other crap. So, I can give you a couple of names. I don't know how nerdy I want to get with it because then it turns into, a pretty big deal. But it, whiskey in itself is inherently agricultural. So what would happen? The farmers would be farming up there, doing their thing because, we didn't have the Industrial Revolution or anything like that yet to have big business come in. They would be farming corn, wheat, barley, whatever, and they would have a surplus. Well, everybody knew when you had a surplus of grain that you can't sell and you can't eat, you have to make liquor out of it. You can make beer, right? You can make a beer, but the beer's only going to last for so long because they didn't have refrigeration either. So you can't refrigerate the beer. Beer will go skunky. It will get bad because it's a low ABV. So they would distill it. Well, they learned those distilling practices because most of the immigrants that came to, not most, but a lot of the immigrants that came to Canada were actually of German descent. Yeah, I know. You would think it would be French, right? You would think they would be French since they are a French-speaking country, but they're not. Are they yeah, they're a country, not a continent. I'm sorry. I get country and continent changed up. Anyway, so they were of German descent or Irish or Scottish. Well, all those people knew about distilling, right? All of them. And, I mean, even if they were French, they knew about distilling as well. But they knew more about wine just because it was in their proximity. So it was mainly German. All of the research that I've done, it was mainly German. And so what they would do is they would distill it. Well, guess what? Like with every other... So you can take Canada, take some of the names of the Canadian people out, take the dates. The dates would be a little askew, and you could literally put in any other country, and it's almost going to be the same. That's why I don't know how many of these I can do talking about different regions, because it turns into like, yeah, it's the same thing. Yeah, prohibition, we know. Yeah, it's this, because it went worldwide. Because what we will learn later is it's all owned by big corporation right now. All of it. There's craft guys, right? There's craft guys trying to do their own thing. There's home distillers. There's all those things there. But it's the big six buy out everything. That's just how it is. That's the world we live in, unfortunately. It's a monopoly. It sucks, but actually you get consistency and you get price normality and stuff like that. Whereas if it was everybody fend for themselves, the price hikes would be all over the place. Like, that when you go to a craft distillery, you're going to pay more than you would at, say, going to a Total Wine or a Specs or something like that. You're going to pay more. That's just how it is. Because you're buying craft, craft product. You're not buying Jim Beam. Now, you would hope that if you went to the Jim Beam distillery, or let's use Canada, you go to the Crown Royal distillery, that a bottle of Crown Royal is going to be cheaper than you can buy it at the store, right? I don't know that. In Canada, I don't know. Their tax laws are way different, and they have universal health care and all those things too. So, it has its good and its bad points, obviously. And if you are Canadian and anything I say on here is wrong and you know it's wrong, I apologize. I mean no ill will towards any Canadian or anything. I'm poking fun. If I'm making fun of, I'm poking fun. I'm not being serious. I'm trying to use the facts, but some of it's just funny. Okay, so in the beginning, there was agricultural, and then they would distill it. Well, the distillate that came off, depending upon what they were making, was corn or whatever. They just turned it into whiskey, and then they would sell the whiskey, obviously, but it was White Dog. It was moonshine, what we would call moonshine, right? It's not mixed with sugar or anything like that, but it would be considered, new make, right? They did have wood barrels, that they used for storage and stuff like that, but it wasn't until a little bit later, like with everybody else, that they incorporated those barrels and used them. And Canada is one, like Scotland, that they don't have a requirement on new oak. It can be a used barrel. You can use it for whatever. Put fish in it and put whiskey in it. It doesn't matter. Obviously, it's going to taste like fish, but whatever. So, anyway, moving on. The year, I'm looking at a lot of notes. So, there's a bunch of people in the Canadian whiskey world that kind of set out and kind of did their thing. You know what I mean? And they're like the benchmarks of Canadian whiskey. One of them's Henry Corby, Corby. The other one, Hiram Walker. I know you've heard of him. The other one, J.P. Weiser. Yeah, he was born in 1825. And then Samuel Bromfman. I don't know how to say names. I'm dumb. Okay. Please don't shoot me. I don't know how to say names. I spell things wrong, or I say things wrong. So Hiram Walker founded the Hiram Walker Distillery in Ontario, becoming cornerstone of Canadian whiskey production in 1858. So we're talking a ways back. You know what I mean? Canadian Club. you know that precious elixir. No, actually, Canadian Club is actually pretty good. And you can get age-stated Canadian Club, like 35, 40-year-old Canadian Club. It's pretty cool. It was introduced by Hiram Walker. It gained international acclaim and played a significant role during Prohibition. Yeah. So Canadian whiskey is often referred to as rye whiskey, despite it containing various grains. It gained prominence during Prohibition and became a popular choice among Americans seeking an alternative. That's pretty crazy, right? They used to call it rye, because you could grow rye grain really easy in Canada. So, it would just be that, like, now, like back in the day, like not even in the 1800s, but in the early 1900s, when you said you wanted a rye whiskey, they would give you a Canadian whiskey, a Canadian rye whiskey. That's just, that was considered rye whiskey. Even though George Washington had his Mount Vernon rye, stuff like that. Even though that was a thing, it was like more of a household thing than it was like widespread. Most Americans didn't like the rye palate, the spiciness or the floral notes or whatever. So when they wanted a rye whiskey, it was mainly Canadian, which is pretty cool. Where am I going? Here we go. No. I'm trying to read and not, you know what I mean? I'm looking through all my notes. I have so many notes. So before, like, right around 1790, 1780, something like that, the English started bringing wheat to North America. And that kind of set off this whole thing where, like, wheat bread, all this stuff, wheat germ, all of these things were coming through. And guess what? They had excess wheat. So they would make wheat. They would put wheat in their whiskey as well. And they noticed that it had that type of flavor. Well, Canada jumped on that. And between 1790 and 1850, Canadian whiskey started being sold into Europe. And Europe actually liked the palate of the Canadian whiskey because it was a little, dare we say, smooth. It was a little smoother, because one of the other things that I saw multiple times in my research is a lot of Canadian distilleries also did charcoal filtering. Yeah, to break down some of the harshness and the grain notes. They were able to subdue some of them sometimes. So they did similar to like the Lincoln County process, like in Tennessee. They would use sugar maple as well. So like they had been doing that. They were doing that before Jack Daniels was even a thing. So I don't know if maybe Jack Daniels didn't get it from Canadian whiskey. But let's talk about a couple of people that I talked about earlier. So a lot of these, obviously, when you get to Canada, it's very wooded. And so there's a lot of trading, wood processing and stuff like that. And they started doing that. So William Gooderheim and James Wort Sr. were primarily grain millers. So they would mill grain in Toronto. J.P. Weiser, we just talked about him. He bought a distillery in Ontario with his uncle. So that he had bought an already existing distillery, and he was a cattle breeder by trade. He bought the distillery for the spent grain for cattle. So he was using, like, he didn't really care about the whiskey at the time. He had all these cattle, and he needed that spent grain to feed his cattle. Kind of cool. So Henry Corby, he was a miller by trade as well. In 1859, he opened Corby Distillery. And then in 1882, Corbyville was established. It's a town. That's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. Like, you come to a part of the world pretty much uninhabited. You know what I mean? And then you open a distillery. Next thing you know, they're naming the town after you. That's really cool. I like that. So, Hiram Walker. You're going to hear his name a lot. He's a bigwig. He was a grocer by trade. Yeah, that's pretty crazy. He built up groceries. He opened his distillery in 1858, the year before Corby did, in Ontario. So Ontario is a big hub for Canadian whiskey, right? And as of right now, Hiram Walker is one of the largest distilleries in North America today. Yeah, so that's why you're gonna hear his name a lot. Okay, Harry Hatch. We're not just gonna talk names, okay? Like, you don't even know who these people are. But I would say if you want to do more research into each specific person, look them up, because I'm not gonna sit here and read to you every person. But Harry Hatch, he owned a bar in Ontario. It was mainly for fishermen. He was a salesman for the Corby Distillery. And he employed the fishermen illegally to sell whiskey into the U.S. So he was bootlegging fishermen to sell whiskey in the U.S. And this is jumping forward a little bit, but in 1925 to 1952, he purchased the Gooderheim and Wort to compete with Corby. But then Harry Hatch was allowed to purchase Corby 3 years later than Hiram Walker. In 1932, he purchased Corby, which had J.P. Weiser. So, like, you got to think, all of these guys, and I'm going to say this word, and I don't mean it derogatorily, they're so incestual, right? Like, they're stealing from this person, buying this distillery out. This guy bought this distillery. This guy married this chick's sister, or this guy's sister, so that he could be in the family, so that he would get to distillery later. Like all this scheming. So Canada was the first country to mandate a minimum age for whiskey. Yeah, that's pretty crazy, right? In 1887, it was a 1-year age statement. It had to be a minimum of 1 year old to be considered whiskey. By 1890, they had upped it to 2 years. And then in 1974, a long time later, they upped it to 3 years. It's got to be 3 years old in Canada. Now, we know that that's the same in Scotland, right? That's the same. I'm trying to turn pages and talk at the same time. These pages are thick, I guess. I don't know what the hell. Sorry. Oh. That doing the age statement caused a lot of distilleries to shut down because they wanted to make new make. They were still trying to make that new makey whiskey. 19 distilleries before 1900. By 1950, there was over 200 distilleries that had shut down because of that requirement. That's pretty crazy. And here is the requirements for Canadian whiskey. All right. Here we go. Less than 700 liters. So in a cask or in a barrel, it has to be less than 700 liters. Minimum of 3 years old in any type of wood. Used, new. It says wood. Doesn't even have to be oak. It could be ambarana. It could be chestnut. It could be cedar. You don't want it in cedar, I promise. It tastes like crap. I have something cool. Sorry, there's a little caveat, but I don't care. It's my podcast. I talk what I want. So, I got this test. Oh, it's not a test. I don't know what it's called. It's a sample kit, right? And it was this same whiskey finished with different staves. Like 12, 10 or 12. Everything from zebra wood to cedar. Right? And you can taste the differences between it. That's super cool. I want to do a sit down of that. I think that would be super fun. I might wait till the cousin comes into town and we'll crack on that. Obviously, we're not going to be drinking all of it because I think it's like 200 ml samples, or maybe even 300 ml samples. It's a pretty good amount. Like, I don't know, on some of those you basically taste it and it's like, oh, that's crap. I heard the red cedar especially was not great. Anyway, so that was the oak requirement. It must be made from cereal grain, aka barley, wheat, malt, whatever. Mashed, fermented, distilled, and aged in Canada. Sorry. A minimum 40 ABV. That's pretty standard. May contain spirit caramel for coloring, E150A. Now here's the thing. This is when I'm going to go into the other book. Because, man, we're already 32 minutes in. That's awesome. 9.09%. Yeah, 9.09% of the liquid in the bottle may be either a minimum of 2-year-old age stated whiskey, spirit, not whiskey, sorry, or wine. Yeah. So let me get the other book, because it goes into a little bit more detail. This is the tasting whiskey book. Ready? Man, I gotta do a lot of reading. I'm sorry. This is coming straight from the book, page 162. If you know a little about Canadian whiskey, you may know about the 9.09% rule for whiskey imports into the United States. It allows up to that percent of a blend to be from stuff. That's what it says. This may be lesser aged spirit, American-made spirits, or blending wine, as described to me at Black Velvet as a very dry white wine, diluted and blended with neutral grain spirit. Okay, so this is, and I mean, they can do this. There's some people that don't, obviously, but so what they would do is they would take some super dry white wine, like wine that you would like cook with or something, like you wouldn't want to drink it, and they would mix it with NGS, neutral grain spirit, right? So like a vodka. They would mix it with vodka and pour it into the bottle. Why? I don't know. That's going to tell us why. By using American ingredients, the distiller gets a tax break on imports to the United States. The components are kept as carefully neutral as possible to make it easier for the blender to match the flavor in all whiskey versions. It's weird, but it's a tax law. Oh man. Where do we even start? You know what I mean? Like, that is so crazy to me. That is so crazy. They are literally putting wine and neutral grain spirit up to 9%. Think about that. 9%. it's not 10%, but it's, that's like 1/10 of whatever's in your bottle is a wine. Just basic wine, not whiskey. Now, how many of them are doing that today? I haven't looked a whole lot into it because, for one, I don't know if I care. I mean, I do care. I want to drink whiskey. I don't want to drink wine, right? But there's a lot of quote unquote rectifiers, and we've talked about finished whiskeys, right? Like how dry was the barrel when they got it? How much port was actually in the barrel when they dumped the whiskey on top of it? I get it. And Jay Rieger out of Kansas City, right? Kansas City or St. Louis? I don't remember. They use up to 12%, and they call it a fortified whiskey. Yeah, or something like that. Rectified whiskey. It's just super crazy. Like, super crazy. Like, I'm not saying it's not good, but you basically have a cocktail. You know what I mean? Like, it's basically a cocktail, which is fine. If you want to have a cocktail, have a cocktail. But at the same time, it's like, what the heck? I thought we were drinking whiskey here, It's crazy. It's crazy. I just thought that was like that's a caveat, but like, so crazy. Okay, so flavored whiskey, flavored Canadian whiskey, Crown Royal, vanilla, Crown Royal peach, Crown Royal this, Crown Royal that. I mean, come on, guys, Crown Royal. I'm not saying that Crown Royal does not have cool stuff. I'm not. I was able to procure their XR Blue, which came from it was one of the final bottlings from the Lasai. I can't speak French. Leave me alone. Lasai Distillery of Crown Royal. It closed down a long time ago. I think it's like 10-year-old Crown. Here's the thing with it. 40%. They didn't raise the proof at all. And that bottle was expensive. It was a gift, luckily. Well, I didn't pay for it, but I paid for it because my wife got it for me. So it's one of those things. But like, it's so weird. Like, that's probably the best Crown Royal out there, other than getting a Crown, from the distillery, a single barrel, or I don't even know if they do that. They're a commodity distillery. So it's just weird that, like, they would proof it to the floor and not have like a cast strength version, or even a little higher. I know the Crown Royal Black. Oh, it's heavier, it's darker. They double oak it. That's cool. But then it's 45%. You know what I mean? Like, don't get me wrong. I know 45% will screw you up just as much as 60%. I get it. Okay, flavored Canadian whiskey. At least 2.5% sweetening required. Minimum 23% ABV. It can go as low as 23%. You're talking, I mean, it's a lot higher than wine. Obviously, wine, you get 17, 18% maybe. But 23 is pretty damn close. You know what I mean? It's like a heavy wine. Can contain natural and artificial flavorings and materials. I don't know what that means. Can contain caramel coloring. People don't care about caramel coloring. Juice, sugar, and neutral grain spirit are allowed. What the hell? You know what I mean? Like, they're literally just dumping juice in it, and, let's put some cherry juice in there, make a cherry, like, good Lord. No wonder people drink that stuff out of the bottle like a freaking juice pack. Anyway, let me get through this. Yeah, we know about barrel influence and tannins and oak lactones. Do you know about oak lactones? I don't know if you do. I don't know. Okay, let's talk about some of the words that they use. Canadian whiskey, they use certain, and it's not really like they're universal words. But when you intake the grain and put it in, the incoming grain going into to cook, it's called grist, right? When you cook it, when you cook the grain, it's called mashing, right? When you ferment the beer, and it makes a beer. And then you distill it, it becomes a spirit. And then once you mature it, or marry it, or whatever, it becomes a whiskey. Blended or not. Mm-hmm. So the grains present as this, which this is what they say, and I don't feel that way, but maybe. Corn, sweet and creamy. Wheat, toasty and bready. Rye, peppery and spicy. Barley, nutty. Barley to me is grainy. They use esogenic and synthetic enzymes to help with fermentation. They sour mash too. They use nitrogen. I didn't know this. They use nitrogen. They add it to the fermentation to aid in yeast growth. 15 to 16%. That's crazy. Fermentation times typically around 72 hours. So that's why they want that quick ferment. The issue with a quick ferment. Okay, are we going to talk about this? Let's talk about it. I don't care. We're in Canada still. It's fine. Think about this. We're sitting at a ski lodge in Canada. I don't ski, but we're sitting at the bar, at the lodge in front of the fireplace. You got your sweater on, not a turtleneck. We don't wear a turtleneck, right? Anyway, we're sitting there, we're having a drink, but there is a thing going around that to get the cleanest fermentation, because fermentation is what gives you your alcohol, right? But it also gives you some esters. It also gives you some phenols. It also gives you a bunch of things that you need in the whiskey. Some people are trying to speed it up so fast. 72 hours, 3 days, right? 3-day ferment from start to finish. A 9% beer in 3 days. You can't tell me that that's not going to stress the yeast. So let's do it like this. You're working at Krispy Kreme, right? You're working at this Krispy Kreme and you're making donuts. They're making donuts. They said you eat as many donuts as you want, right? And so what happens? The first couple days you're working there, you eat your weight in donuts, right? Then after a while, you're just like, oh gosh. Well, let's change that and then turn it into you're working at Krispy Kreme in the back factory and you have to eat every donut that comes off that conveyor belt in 3 days. What's it going to do? It's going to make you sick, right? You're going to be literally sick to your stomach. I think that happens with the yeast as well. Injecting nitrogen in there to make them work faster, I feel like that might not produce off flavors, but it's going to make... Popcorn Sutton, he didn't tell me this, but he said that the way that the liquor acts is how the liquor is. So if it's real fast, I feel like it gets hot and it gets spiky and it gets angry. Like it's an angry liquor. And I don't like that. I don't want to drink angry liquor. I like a slower fermentation, Take your time, open vatted, not forced carbed or, whatever. Like make it to where it's like the yeast are working, they're doing their job, but you're not I understand we all have deadlines, we all have schedules, we all have things, but let the yeast do their job. Let them flocculate. I know that's a big word, I'm sorry. Let them flocculate out, be done eating, Don't use turbo clear to clear the wort out. Let it sit for a day. Let it sit, okay? Let it calm down and then distill it. These people are distilling in 3 days and the yeast are still eating on the damn, you know what I mean? Or they're hybridizing the yeast so much to where they're just eating workhorses, right? And the esters and the profile that you're going to get is going to be muted and it's not going to be as good. That is a personal opinion. Do not take that to the bank, but that's just how I believe. If we let the yeast do their job and produce some esters and some phenols in there, it's going to make for a better whiskey. That's just me. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to go off on a tangent, but that irks me sometimes. I know with Andalusia, they just let their yeast do their thing. Obviously, they don't want them fermenting for weeks and weeks at a time. I get it. They do have a schedule, but they said normally, without doing anything, sometimes they actually have to chill the yeast or chill the wort because, like, the yeast are too active. They gotta chill them out. They said normally it's 4 days, and they can, start stilling. So they have 3 or 4 vats. They do 1, 2, 3, 4. You know what I mean? And then by the time they get done with the other one, they're already ready to use the first one. You know what I mean? Smart working. Anyway, so okay, so let's talk about the distillation practice. So there's a single column distillation, double column, and then column, then pot. Okay? So single column distillation, the beer goes in at the top, the steam from the bottom makes a mini distillation on each plate, which we've talked about. Continuous stills, right? The copper absorbs sulfur and becomes copper sulfate. It retains most of the yeast character, the fruit, the floor, the grass, the soapy, and it retains the grain character. So then when you double column distill, it makes a lighter style of spirit, more textbook Canadian. And Zach, I'm reading directly from your notes. Okay, so if they're wrong, it's on you. I'm sorry, that was stupid. So column then pot is a lot slower because pot distillation's 10 times slower than column. It's up to 12 hours for one distillation, which is a long time, especially when you're distilling, thousands of gallons, liters, whatever you want to call it. So here's a cool thing, and this is not all the time, okay? But one of the distinguishing factors of Canadian whiskey is, and not all distilleries do this, but a lot of them do, one of the distinguishing factors is they will distill each grain separately and then blend them back together okay, so let's say they're making they can't make bourbon, right? They can't make bourbon because bourbon's only in America. Let's say they're making a grain whiskey, aka bourbon mash, with corn, rye, and malt. They will make a mash out of corn only and use enzymes, right? They'll use enzymes to convert it. They will distill it. They will mash it, ferment it, distill it. Sometimes, I've heard of 2 distilleries that do this. They will actually mature it to full maturation as corn whiskey, right? At that point, it's corn whiskey. They will do the same thing with the rye, just the rye. Do the same exact thing, and then they'll do that with the malt, same exact thing. And then once it has the 3 years, whatever you want to call it, 3 years of maturation in new or used oak, it doesn't matter, then they will blend it together to their specifications. To me, that is super cool. That is super cool. But the issue is, a lot of times what they'll do is they will rectify or column distill the corn. You know what I mean? They will mostly column then pot distill the rye and the barley, but the corn they normally always double column distill, because they want that light note. They don't want that okay, Canadian whiskey. Why do I keep saying wiki? Canadian whiskey to me tastes a lot. It is a lot lighter, but it's also a lot of the ones that I've had up until recently have been blended, what they call blended whiskeys, which are blended with neutral grain spirit, which is vodka, right? So you're going to get a very light, I call it like a metallic vanilla, like almost astringenty vanilla, super light flavor, light color, all of those things. You're gonna get that's what you're gonna get with Canadian. Up until now, here's the other issue: like they're distilling each one separately, right? The flavors of the phenols and the oils in each one of those don't have time to mingle together. They put them in a marrying cask, which means just that. They put them all together at their specifications. Like, let's say they want a rye heavy, they'll do 65% rye, 28% corn, and the rest, barley. And they'll put them all in the casks, in the one cask. I'm sorry. Getting sleepy. They'll put them all into one cask and marry them for 6 months. Or that cask might have had sherry or port or, something like a wine finish in it. They do that a lot, actually. The marrying cask is actually something completely different that they're going to marry it into. I feel, and this is personal, I'm not a distiller of Hiram Walker, nor do I plan to be one. I feel like that does not do the whiskey justice. Marrying it together for 6 months or whatever, depending, doesn't give it enough time. It's discordant. It makes it fall flat. Okay, and then you add neutral grain spirit on top of it. The little bit of flavor that was there is now gone, and the only thing you're getting is a little bit of barrel candy and some ethanol. That's just me, okay? But I will tell you that of recent, I have 2 Canadian single malts. Yeah, from Glen Britain. Glenora, whatever you want to call it. The Glenora Distillery. One of them is a peated. Yeah, I know. I didn't know Canada did peat. Whatever. I smelled it. Dealt it. No, I smelled it, and it smells amazing, okay? Have not tried it. I will give you guys an update when I do, if I can. I'm having a hard time with whiskey right now. I know, it sucks so bad. I need to get over this, though, so I'm trying to be a good boy. In the 1800s, rye was the dominant grain. Rye grain has more lignans than any other grain. So it was a dominant grain in the 1800s, and it was they had a dominant. It was dominant in their blends as well, and then they had 100% rye. You could get 100% rye whiskey, which is cool. All right, let's get on with it. Okay. Okay, so we could also talk about terroir, right? Terroir is a thing everywhere. Everywhere you go, everywhere you look, terroir is going to affect it. So what is the terroir of Lower Canada, right? It's cold. It's wooded. It's how do you say it? It's like crispy. The air is like crispy. I'm not saying it doesn't get hot there. I'm sure it does. I'm sure it does get hot there. But the temperature is more on the cold side than it is a temperate climate. I would say even more cold than Scotland. It's just chilly up there. So the barrel influence of said whiskeys are going to be minimal. And then if you use a used oak barrel, it's going to be even less. It's basically at probably 6 months out of the year, it's basically just a vessel holding whiskey. That's not actually maturing, doing anything. You know what I mean? It's literally just holding the whiskey in there. But okay. I'm looking through my notes. I'm sorry. See, this is one of the notes that I wrote down, and we just talked about it, but it says one of the defining characteristics of Canadian whiskey is its smoothness. Canadian whiskeys are often lighter and smoother than their counterparts from other countries, partially due to the production process, which includes a blending, often incorporating high percentage of double column distilled corn in the mash bill. It's crazy. It's like I knew. You know what I mean? We're getting close to the hour. I gotta watch my time so it doesn't cut me off. All right, so I thought this was a cool little thing. Like we're going back to the beginnings, right? The beginnings of Canadian whiskey. My mustache keeps getting stuck in the microphone. Sorry. Okay. The heading of this in the book is The Dynasty, the Molson Distillery, 1821 to 1868. So it's not even around anymore. You know what I mean? But let me just read this passage to you because I feel like then we'll get into the bureaucracy. Ready? On June 10th, 1791, King George III of England gave royal assent to the Constitution Act, splitting the province of Quebec into Upper and Lower Canada. Several weeks later, on September 1st, 1791, in Montreal, where neither royal fanfare nor public notice, an English immigrant named John Molson, and his American housekeeper, Sarah Vaughan, celebrated the birth of their second child. They named the infant Thomas J. Nope. Oh my God. They named the infant Thomas. John had sold the Lincolnshire estate and his inheritance from his father to invest in a new life as a brewer in Montreal. An enterprise he began even before he reached the legal age of 21. In December 1784, and this time his son would have turned his brewery in the East Montreal suburb of St. Mary's into the largest distillery in the Commonwealth. That's pretty crazy. Is that? I don't know why I've read that. God, dog. Did I just read that for no reason? I thought there was a cool thing that... So, like, here's the deal. Hold on. Gotta go. Hold on. Okay, sorry. Man, I don't know. I read that for no damn reason. What the hell's wrong with me? There was a reason I had that page booked, but why? Why? Hold on. Give me 5 seconds, Lord. No. Maybe it was on the other page. I don't know. I'm sorry. I read that whole freaking sonnet, and you had to hear it. I'm very sorry. That was it. That was idiotic. So, here's the deal. There is some amazing... I have learned. There is some amazing whiskeys in Canada. The issue is they cannot export it. Or they won't export it. A lot of it stays in Canada. So if you want good Canadian whiskey, go to Canada. No, I mean, it just kind of, that you can find some, right? Especially if you live in that upper part, Chicago, Detroit, places like that. You might be able to find some. Or you can just go over the border and go to Ontario and, or Toronto and get you some. But it's like, it really frustrates me because, like, it gives Canadian whiskey a bad name, I feel. Whereas, like, with Scotch and Irish even. Irish is even a little bit on the weird side. But, like, with Scotch, we can get amazing Scotches here. Right? We can. Like, you can get, all the Ardbegs and the Lefroys and the Glenfarclas and the Glenfiddich and the Highland Park and the Monkey Shoulder and the Springbank and, I'm just literally naming distilleries at this point. But, like, name Canadian whiskey. I'll wait. Yeah, that's what I thought. You're going to name, I know who you're going to name. You're going to name Crown Royal, right? That's the number one. That's the one you're going to name. Then you're going to name Canadian Club, right? Then you're going to name Canadian Mist. One that I used to drink a lot of, mixed it with Coke, of course, was 40 Creek. 40 Creek's doing some cool stuff now. They have a distiller's reserve. They have all this other stuff. It's hard to find, though. That's the thing. Now, another cool one is Alberta Distilling. If you can find some of that, get some of it. Another one, Gooderheim and Wort. If you can find that. I doubt you will, but Canadian Club has 100% rye whiskey. That's kind of cool. The 40 Creek has one called Confederate Oak. It's a well-regarded whiskey. It has Canadian oak barrels. That's kind of cool. Lot 40. Have you heard of Lot 40? Cousin got some Lot 40, and it was pretty good. Canadian rye whiskey. Let me tell you, a lot of the rye whiskey that you get in the world is still to this day Canadian. Yeah, it's imported. Did you know that I saw this in that book? I think I might use it as my thumbnail. Hopefully it's not a copyright thing, but Old Overholt. Yeah. Old Overholt has an old dude on the front. Looks like a pre-prohibition bottle. You can find it almost anywhere. I think it's 43% rye whiskey, right? It's good stuff. It's not bad. Was Canadian. Yeah, I know. They're not anymore, but they were Canadian. For a long time. And then American company bought them and took the name, turned it to American. Yeah, it's kind of weird. But yeah, it's crazy to think that, like, all of your whiskey production, not all of it, but most of your whiskey production is bent upon 4 or 5 different distilleries. And that's your entire base. You know what I mean? And it has now been bought up by Diageo and Pernod and all of those, Seagrams, 7 and 7, you know what I mean? Seagram's was a big one. He was a big proponent of monopolizing. He monopolized a lot of Scotch as well, so it's not just Canadian. It's unfortunate. Here's the deal. I am against big business, obviously, right? If you know me for a minute, you can tell I'm against big business, big pharma, big tech, big whatever. I barely have phone that I know how to use. You know what I mean? It's not. Anyway, it's a thing. But one thing I will say, and as long as the quality of whiskey stays the same, I'm against the big 6 distilleries in the world. I am against them. Because I love craft, right? I love craft. You give me some craft Canadian rye, oh my God, please. All day. All day. What is my buddy's? Oh, man. What is his distillery name? God dang it, I'm going to forget. Mark Townsend. Anyway. Silver Fox Distilling. Look them up. He's doing some amazing stuff. He used to have a YouTube channel, and he was doing some little home distilling stuff. And now he has opened a legit distillery making cool shit. That's a dream, right? That's what people think. I love whiskey, man. I'd love to make it. This dude did it. He's doing some cool stuff. I've asked him multiple times to ship me something. He won't do it. I'm not big enough, I guess. One day. Or maybe I'll just go to his distillery. You know what I mean? Maybe I'll just go up there and be like, hey, let's do a barrel pick. Whatever. I don't know. Anyway, it's crazy how it turns into like these big 6 companies come in and they buy up all the real estate. They buy up everything. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I get it. It's a money-making scheme. And I will tell you this. You probably don't know and don't care that Beam Suntory is making your Jim Beam and not Jim Beam. You probably don't care that Pernod owns Jack Daniels. Right? You don't know and you don't care because it's not on the thing. Right? You probably don't care that Diageo owns Ardbeg. You don't care about that. You just drink the damn whiskey, right? Correct. But at the same time, this is my 2 cents. Take it for what it is. There is something to be said about corporate leanings in a agricultural and such a market as whiskey. Because whiskey in itself has to be itself. Right? Like if you're... Okay. Like I tell people, the whiskey is going to be what it is. Right? It's going to be what it is. You can't make a $20 bottle of Maker's Mark turn into a bottle of Pappy. You can't make it do that. You can have good whiskey in, get good whiskey out, right? The issue I see with the big business, big whiskey, whatever you want to call it, the issue I see with them is production quality, right? They have the money to have the best equipment, the best stills, the best still hands, the best grain. That's fine. But it's like a 3-legged stool. This is what my buddy George with Barley and Hops always talks about, the 3-legged stool. You can have the best process, you can have the best grains, but equipment is the other one. But like it also goes into this. If your bottom line says we need to get that whiskey out today, and that whiskey's not ready to get out. You're preempting the whiskey to come out before it's fully matured and before it's turned into what it needs to, right? And I know as most distillers are going to say, hey, I'd like to see this whiskey sit for another 2 years, but it's good now. I mean, I've heard multiple distillers tell me that. I got to get it out. I got to have product on the shelf. I'd love to have this thing sit for a little bit longer, but I can't. Well, think about that on a grand scale. They're like, I need 80,000 cases by the end of the week. And you have to blend 400 barrels of whiskey, right? Hold on, I'm getting further and further away from the damn things. You have 80 barrels or 8,000 barrels of whiskey you have to blend and put into a profile. Sorry, had to get a little drink again. You have, and so then it turns into, is the product just a commodity to get out on the shelf? Or is it a passion project? Is it doing the whiskey justice? And that's where I feel the big six, the big whiskey, whatever you want to call it, isn't failing yet. But what'll happen is when you're running and gunning and filling that many barrels a day and having that many barrels around, I understand you have a lot to play with, a lot of stock to play with. So it's going to take excellent head distillers and excellent still hands to pick the barrels that are ready. And that puts a lot of pressure on those people to make sure, because of quotas that we have to meet, is the product going to fail? And I've seen it with different distilleries, and I'm not going to name any. You have one bottle of this, and you're like, oh man, that's good. It's got a great cherry note, or it's got a great, it's like a cinnamon bomb or something like that. And then you get another bottle, a year later or whatever, you get another bottle, and you're like, where's that cinnamon note? That cinnamon note's gone. It still tastes the same, but not really. And I know flavor drift, that's a thing. I get it. The flavors are going to change. The grain is going to be different. The water chemistry could be a little different. Each barrel is different. I understand all of these things. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying even the quality. The quality is still there. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, and this is opinion again, they are pushing the whiskey into a corner that it doesn't want to be in. You know what I mean? Let the whiskey do its thing. And let it arrive when it arrives. Don't make it, don't push it faster. Okay, rant over. Sorry. And that goes for Canadian whiskey as well. Crown Royal is one of the Hiram Walker's one of the largest distilleries in North America. That's crazy. But when you're producing the amount of volume that somebody like Crown Royal or Canadian Club or these Canadian whiskey purveyors are doing, you have to meet quota. You have to. Luckily, their flavor profile with what they have is pretty consistently where they want it. So it makes it a little bit easier. Okay, so I'm going to sum this up because we're running into some time now. How do I feel about Canadian whiskey? From starting this little adventure to now, and I'm sorry I didn't get more into history and science and stuff like that. It's all about the same. Like, this guy came in, he did a thing, he started making spirits. Some guy got pissed off that he was making spirits, tried to kill him. Then he started making spirits, and then they were fighting over who was making spirits. Then the government came in and told them, oh, now we're going to tax you on your spirits. And so they got all pissed off. Bam, Prohibition. Prohibition was worldwide. I don't know if you knew that. Yeah. It was different types of prohibition, obviously, but it was all ran by the whatever. We'll talk about that later. It was all orchestrated for a reason, is what I'm trying to say. To keep everybody from drinking, obviously. But then yet some distilleries were still open. Like, a lot of distilleries closed down after Prohibition and never opened back up. Like, all around the world, we almost didn't even have Irish whiskey. It was like one freaking distillery. That's it. You know what I mean? It's crazy. It's crazy. What did Alan say? Like 190 apple brandy distilleries in Indiana alone got shut down and never opened again. And they were providing apple brandy to Calvados, to France and Spain and all of these places from Indiana. You know what I mean? Anyway, not trying to talk about that again. I'd love to have Alan back on again. I will soon, but after we get done with all this bullshit I gotta do. That way we can sit down and have a little drink, you know, talk. Maybe we'll talk about absinthe. I know it's not whiskey, but I'm intrigued by absinthe, bro. I know you already know that. Anyway. So, the history is just a torrid past of people trying to do the right thing, using what they got, grit and ingenuity, and then somebody coming in and screwing it up, making it hard for them, and then they're like, well, shit, okay, let's do this. And so they start doing something else, and then they end up selling out to big whiskey anyway. So take that for what it is. Look for my, hopefully, you know, I don't want to tentatively say anything because I don't know what's going to happen with all these treatments I'm taking. So look for my review of those 2 Canadian single malts. Especially that peated one. I can't wait to get into that. I've never had a peated Canadian whiskey in my life. I'm really excited about that. They're super light, super cool. One's a 12 and one's a 13-year-old. It's kind of cool. Anyway, how do I feel about Canadian whiskey now? How do I feel? My mind is opened. My mind is excited. I've always looked at Canadian whiskey kind of like with not so good eyes, right? And I don't mean that with any disrespect, but I was never really informed about Canadian whiskey and what it could do. I know their process is cool. The way they do things is cool. It's a little bit different, and I love different, right? But now, okay, I've been doing this study for weeks, right? Off and on, of course. I'm not a geek. I don't like sit there and read the book and read the book again. I barely got through, a couple pages and went from there. But anyway, now I'm excited. I'm anxious. I'm very open to the thought of Canadian whiskey. Canadian whiskey in all the ways. You know what I mean? Like, I would love to try a Canadian I have no idea what's going on. I have no idea. No, I would love to try like a sherried single malt from Canada. I would love to try a grungy, dirty, like, what do you call it? Distilled from a bourbon mash, aged in new oak type whiskey from Canada. I would love to try that. I would love to be on the cutting edge of that. I think Canada is beautiful. The people are amazing. Super nice, super caring. I had to throw one in there. Sorry. But, so yeah, my thoughts have totally changed, about Canadian whiskey. It makes me want to open up the 40 Creek again and try it. I actually have a bottle that was given to me. I don't know how old it is. It's super old, probably. It's probably 20 years old. I have a bottle. I might open it up. Who knows? And just try it and taste it and get past the cliche of it. I think once we get past those cliches of whiskey and knowing what whiskey is, like I did it's not out yet. That's not going to be out for a minute, but I did a video for YouTube, and I was talking about, like what whiskey is, like what a bourbon is. 'Cause everybody's like, hey, You want a whiskey or a bourbon? They're the same, right? Whiskey is bourbon. Bourbon is whiskey. Are you talking about like a scotch, a single malt? No, not a scotch. That's peaty. I kind of tried to talk about that, but like everybody thinks with Canadian that it's that light, Crown Royal-y taste, and that's not true. That's not true. It is very. It's a very different palate. I will say that. It's very clean. It's very. It's. I can't explain it. I was able to try some. I think I posted about it anyway. 35-year-old JP Weiser, which again, age statement doesn't matter to me. I just knew that it had been in a barrel for 35 years. That's going to taste the trueness of that whiskey. You know what I mean? And it was not dark at all. It was not. Oh my God. I don't know. I don't know what's going on. I need to go lay down. Anyway, 35-year-old JP Weiser. Tried it. It was light as hell. But the flavor on it. Oh man, it was so good. It was sweet. Like, when I say sweet, obviously it might have sugar in it. Who knows? But we talked about what was in it. It might have some damn sugar in it. Who knows? But like, it was so good. It was refreshing. You know what I mean? It wasn't dark and heavy and weighted. Like some whiskeys can be. Like, you get some bourbons and they're just heavy. You know what I mean? Whereas this was light and refreshing, and it was a good flavor. So I'm gonna leave you with this. Take what you think about Canadian whiskey, write it down on a piece of paper, crumple it up, throw it out the window. Don't litter, but you know what I mean. Because there's so much more out there for Canadian. And I encourage you to go out there and try. See if you can find a good lot 40. You know what I mean? I've seen them in the liquor store before. I'm gonna look for them now. You know what I mean? See if you can find some JP Weiser. See if you can find some higher. You'll find Hiram Walker, but maybe stay away from Crown, obviously. But like, if you can find, I don't know, like Canadian Club, but like not the Canadian Club that you get at the store. Like a special Canadian Club or something like that. Like I said, 40 Creek is doing some amazing things. Some single barrels picks and some hand pulled and blah 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 blah. Get out there and find some Canadian whiskey, because I guarantee you, if you find one, and I'll try and do some more posts when I go to the liquor store the next time, and maybe do a walkthrough of the Canadian and kind of tell you what I think what I would get, or what I will get. Who knows? This has opened my mind for sure to Canadian. It's lighter. It's fruity. It's sweet. I don't know. It's just different. And I like that. I like that it's different. And it's not trying to play up to anybody. It's acceptable. It can be accepted with anybody. It goes good in a cocktail. You know what I mean? It could get buried. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. I'm sorry I ranted a couple of times. Had to leave a couple of times. Hopefully you won't even know. But other than me going, what the hell? Out of nowhere. But, so yeah, I appreciate y'all, and thank you for listening. And, one thing I forgot to do, and I'm so sorry, Chris. Thank you again to the sponsor, our continued sponsor. There will be a affiliate link in the description below for Bad Motivator barrels. Go and pick you up a barrel, please. They have the new Infinity barrel. It's a little bit more expensive, but it's also freaking amazing. Go get you one of them, and yeah, it'll help me out. It'll help him out. Support local business. You know what I mean? That's all we're trying to do here. And they make some amazing stuff. You know what I mean? So just go support them. All right. That's where I'm going to leave it. I apologize for the rambling, and I thank you for the support, and I thank you for loving me, even though you don't know me. No. And I can't wait to see what we're going to get into next week. I'm going to try and take care of that this week, so that, because I feel good this week, I'm going to try and take care of that. So I need to get to work on the next one. So until next time, you know what to do. Now, trying to get to the thing. Until next time, let's turn the music up a little bit here. I'll go out on a banger. Until next time, keep your spirits up.